Before light came from a switch, it came from the sky. And when the sky went dark, so did life. In 1900 America, long before electricity hummed invisibly through wires and walls, the rhythm of life was dictated by something far older and far less forgiving, the sun. There were no glowing screens to steal attention after dark, no streetlights to stretch the day, no refrigerators quietly preserving tomorrow's meals. When the sun rose, life began. When darkness fell, life slowed, narrowed, and often stopped entirely. This was not a lifestyle choice, it was a rule. At the turn of the 20th century, more than 90% of American homes had no electricity. Even in cities, electric service was limited, unreliable, and expensive. Rural America, where a large portion of the population lived, would not see widespread electrification for decades. For most families, daylight was currency. Every task, every ambition, every chance to earn or survive depended on how many usable hours the sun allowed. Morning came early, very early. Farmers often woke before dawn, guided not by alarm clocks but by habit and necessity. Roosters, not radios, announced the day. Lamps were used sparingly in the pre-dawn hours because oil, kerosene, and candles cost money. Children dressed in half-light. Breakfasts were simple and fast, cornbread, eggs, leftover stew, because every minute of sunlight mattered. As the sun climbed, work exploded into motion. Fields filled with movement, horses were harnessed, tools clanged. In towns and cities, factory whistles signaled the start of shifts timed precisely to daylight. Shops opened their doors wide to capture as much natural light as possible. Windows were not decorative features, they were essential infrastructure. Buildings were designed to chase sunlight, not block it. Without electric power, nearly every task demanded more human effort. Washing clothes meant hauling water, heating it over fire, scrubbing by hand, and hanging garments outside to dry, hoping the weather cooperated. Cooking required constant attention. Fires had to be lit, maintained, and fed. A single meal could take hours of preparation, all done before dusk if possible. Darkness complicated everything. Inside homes, daylight shaped architecture and behavior. Families arranged furniture near windows. Children were expected to finish chores and schoolwork before sunset. Reading after dark was possible, but costly. Oil lamps produced dim, uneven light and carried constant fire risk. Candles were precious. Many families limited evening reading to a few minutes, saving light for emergencies. Night, when it arrived, was not gentle. It was thick, quiet, and absolute. Streets outside major cities were unlit. Even in urban areas, gas lamps were sparse, flickering, and unreliable. Once the sun disappeared, movement slowed dramatically. Shops closed. Social visits ended early. Travel after dark was dangerous, not just because of crime, but because of terrain. Uneven roads, wandering animals, and unseen obstacles turned simple walks into risks. This darkness shaped American psychology. Time felt heavier. Silence was louder. Families gathered close, not for entertainment, but for safety and warmth. Evenings were filled with quiet conversation, storytelling, mending clothes, or sitting together in shared exhaustion. There was no background noise of electricity, no hum, no glow, only firelight and shadow. For children, darkness enforced discipline. Bedtimes were early, not because parents were strict, but because there was nothing to do safely after sunset. Sleep was synchronized with nature. Insomnia existed, but distraction did not. Dreams came easily in a world where bodies were genuinely tired. Winter was especially brutal. Short days meant less work could be done, but survival still demanded effort. Families rationed light carefully. Lamps were dimmed. Fires were banked. Long winter nights were endured rather than enjoyed. Yet these months also strengthened bonds. Storytelling traditions thrived. Oral history passed from generation to generation because there was time and darkness to listen. Workplaces without electricity were unforgiving. Factories relied on large windows and skylights. When clouds rolled in, productivity dropped. Accidents increased as light faded. In some industries, work simply stopped when daylight failed. Wages were affected by weather in ways modern workers would barely recognize. A rainy week could mean hunger. Medical care was also shaped by light. Surgeries were often scheduled around daylight. Doctors preferred to operate near windows. Nighttime emergencies were terrifying. A single lamp might be all that stood between life and death. Mistakes were common, not because doctors lacked skill, but because they lacked visibility. Social life followed the same solar rules. Weddings were daytime events. Funerals happened early. Community gatherings were planned around the sun's reliability. Church services were held during daylight hours, especially in rural areas. Darkness was not romantic, it was an obstacle. Yet this sun-governed life created a deep awareness of time that modern America has largely lost. People felt days pass physically. They noticed seasonal shifts immediately. Longer days brought relief and opportunity. Shorter days brought caution. Life expanded and contracted with the sky. Children learned this rhythm early. They knew when to hurry and when to slow down. They understood that tomorrow's work depended on today's light. Procrastination was costly. There was no later tonight. There was only now or tomorrow. When electricity finally began to arrive, slowly, unevenly, it felt miraculous. A single bulb could extend the day for hours. Work changed. Leisure expanded. Night lost its authority. But something else quietly disappeared, the natural stopping point. In 1900 America, darkness forced rest. It demanded reflection. It limited overwork. Families were not healthier because life was easier. Life was harder, but they were more synchronized with nature's boundaries. The sun set and the day ended. There was no argument. Looking back, life before electricity was not romantic, nor was it cruel by intention. It was honest. Time was visible. Effort was tangible. Rest was inevitable. People lived by the sky because they had no other choice. Before electricity, America did not conquer the night. It respected it. And in that respect, a different kind of balance existed, one shaped not by switches or schedules, but by the ancient certainty that when darkness came, the day was truly over.